Questions of much graver and universal interest occupy our minds today.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Eric Schein. I'm a graduate of Kings Point, the United States Merchant Marine Academy in Long Island, New York. I am a graduate as a naval officer on special duty in the United States Merchant Marine, serving in the United States Merchant Marine. We are here today to talk about the U.S. Coast Guard and Department of Homeland Security and the admiralty or military courts that have started under the Coast Guard since March 6th or March 1st of 2003. And I have a special guest today, an individual who witnessed these trials or these military commissions or military tribunals on May 20th of this year that lasted from May 20th, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, 2008. He did witness only the first day, and he is here to testify or witness to or let you as the viewer know what is going on behind the scenes within the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Coast Guard, and these secretive military courts that are being carried on here in the United States right now by a quote-unquote special branch of military, i.e. the U.S. Coast Guard, and carrying on these trials or tribunals against alleged civilians. Welcome to the program, Adam. Hello. This is Adam Olabuenaga. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here today?
Well, basically, just 23-year-old, basically kid. Just recently became friends with you, and through that, you invited me to the trial, which really wasn't even a trial to begin with. It was more like them just kind of winning.
Kangaroo court.
Yeah, kangaroo court, if you want to say it, and yeah, just witness to history being made every day, and it's unbelievable.
Well, and the thing is, you're 23 years old. Do you have any formal education in the law?
No, not really. I mean,
read...
I've seen things on television, read things, but as far as actually been a student of law or anything like that, no.
But you know how our system is supposed to work.
Absolutely.
And you know and understand our Constitution.
Absolutely. Judge, jury, and
and the
setup
independent
of court,
branches of government, like the
continuity of government, absolutely.
No, not the continuity of government.
Oh, okay.
The as far as Article 1, Congress, Article 2, which is the executive branch, the president, and Article 3, which is our judiciary,
right.
That they're supposed to be independent of each other. They have separate and distinct duties.
Checks and balances.
Right. Have you ever served in any court or as on a jury?
No, almost did, but I didn't get called.
But you do understand how our system is supposed to work. You were invited to attend the May 20th. We didn't know that it was actually going to last for 4 days. It was only noticed for the one day, and that one day was not properly noticed with enough advance notice to not only prepare for it, but let people know that, hey, you need to be there. But you did attend, and tell us a little bit. You've actually, well, two things. Let me get into this. The first is you've signed an affidavit.
Yes.
That goes into what you witnessed on that day. The second is you know that I've been fighting this for some time now. Probably you're aware of at least the last 5 years or so.
I'm aware, yeah.
Coast Guard and Homeland Security brought charges against me on March 6, 2003.
Which is ludicrous.
Well, well, yeah, right, especially for the charges. And as you understand the charges from what you saw, what are the charges?
I'm not joking when I say this. It's for quote-unquote being depressed.
Which is, right, somewhat absurd. But you also understand that the Coast Guard is declaring itself to be a special branch of military.
Yeah.
Did you see any indication of that there at the trial or tribunal?
Well,
that it was a military court?
Well, absolutely. Everybody in the courtroom was either in uniform, of Coast Guard uniform, or serving currently in the Coast Guard.
And I mean, the uniforms look like a branch of military?
Absolutely.
You saw
the decoder, whatever.
the ribbons?
I'm not sure what that stuff's called.
The awards and
the
ribbons.
line stuff,
right.
and then the stars on the side and everything, and all that,
Right.
and the stripes right there.
Like a medium blue.
Yep.
Right. And the interesting thing was the prosecutor is a JAG officer, or Judge Advocate General Officer Corps. And you understand that a little bit about what that is?
And I absolutely understand how that stuff works, and it's supposed to be JAG officers aren't supposed to do it to citizens, I believe.
Or civilians.
They're supposed to do it to other JAG counsel, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, or
right?
to uniformed members of their same service. So
Exactly,
that you would have the Navy prosecuting an individual in the Navy.
In the Navy, not the
within
Coast Guard to a
right,
naval officer.
to where it goes to separation. And you understand, and you've seen evidence that would show that I am a naval officer.
Well,
or that it's at least a dispute.
I don't really need the evidence, but yes, I've seen the evidence. But they also stated it in court through the judge and through the prosecution that everybody declared that it was fact.
That I'm a naval officer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
But they were alleging in their complaint that I'm a civilian.
Yes.
So they're kind of all over the map on that.
Yeah, they're just picking and choosing their angles whenever they feel like it.
And then you saw, like, for the charges and what you mentioned, which was for quote-unquote being
depressed.
Right.
Which is ludicrous.
What does that make you think of when you hear of a civilian being charged and or prosecuted by a branch of military for something like that, like being depressed? What does that make you think of?
Well, what does it make me think of? Well, I mean, it makes me think of a lot of things, but what I would first say is it's an absolutely ludicrous charge because you can't really correctly define that and apply it to competency of a job.
But is it a violation of law, rule, or regulation?
I would say so.
To be depressed?
No, I'm sorry. No, I don't.
I mean, you realize that there
I'm
has
saying
to be...
I thought you meant is it a violation to do that to you? Sorry.
Right. No. And that's what. But it requires more normally an act of incompetence, whether it's like a license or professional type issue.
Mm-hmm.
It would be for an act of incompetence that you're licensed to do.
Yeah,
like say a doctor.
yeah, exactly. Which I don't believe anybody there was qualified to make that determination about you.
Right, because none of them are in the Navy in the first place.
And none of them are doctors.
Right. Right. And you saw.
I mean, I hate to laugh, but I mean, it's just.
Well,
they're getting away with it at all right now, and I don't understand why.
And they're getting away with murder to a large extent.
I'm sure they are in some regards, yes.
I mean, well, but even by what they're doing, because you don't necessarily charge somebody with quote unquote being depressed, prosecute them aggressively using military assets and resources, unless you want to kill somebody.
Or unless you want to get them to not be in the mainstream, like to remove you from public. Not necessarily, kill you,
well,
quote unquote, but
when you steal,
take your livelihood away from you.
Well,
so technically killing you.
I mean, it is depriving you of a way to live,
Yes.
but also stealing medical records, falsifying medical records, I think you saw the bolo, the Be on the Lookout, the poster that they put out on me saying that I may be dangerous.
I have not seen that, no.
Okay, I'll have to show that to you.
Okay.
But you have seen a lot of the documentation that relates to what's going on. You did,
Absolutely.
and you did see even a lot of the documentation we brought in on that day.
Oh yeah, you presented a plethora of information that first day. I mean,
Well, we brought it in with us. We didn't get a chance to present it.
No, but I mean, as far as what I saw, I heard a lot of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, tell us about that day. What actually transpired? Who did you see when you came in? You have it in your. Well, before I say that, I want to real clearly, and I showed you this article. It's just come out yesterday that the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, is to audit the U.S. Coast Guard Administrative Law System, which is the court that I've been trapped within for minimally the last 5 years.
Right.
And they go into, and they even say here, and I'll read from the article. This is from Rajesh Joshi, New York, Monday the 2nd. It's actually on Lloyd's List if you want to look it up online. But it says the GAO audit follows the events of last summer when hearings on Capitol Hill sought to establish whether the U.S. Coast Guard was in effect running a quote-unquote kangaroo court. Would you say that what you saw there that day was a kangaroo court?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, they gave you absolutely no chance to defend yourself. Every objection that you had, regardless of how valid it was, which all of them were to my knowledge because they were objections that were perfect, and they were exactly sustainable, yet overruled every time. And not only that, you were told to shut up and sit down numerous times.
Did they call security?
Yes, they did.
Why do you think they called security?
I'm not sure.
Was there anything that I did or anyone else did in the room that would be justification for the judge to continually call security?
No, but nobody was, no.
Did you see anything on the part of this judge that would make you question his mental competency or his fitness to be sitting in the position that he's sitting in?
Well, pretty much the entire time he was the ALJ, the quote-unquote ALJ, he was pretty much unfit. It was clear.
Was he hostile?
To a degree. I mean, as far as, yes, to a degree. As far as was he as hostile as I've seen other things and other portrayals, through movies or reenactments of certain things, no, not necessarily. But yes, he was hostile.
Did you think that he, I guess, was holding a personal bias against myself as a respondent?
Oh, yes. He definitely had something to prove to you that this was his court, and it was pretty apparent by the amount of times he overruled you.
Do you think that he, not only just a personal bias, but do you think he actually knew what decision in advance he wanted?
As far as to the outcome of the case?
Yes.
It appeared that way.
Is there any indication that...
Can I say that for sure is like definite?
Well, by
that's
the way
he
he handled himself. And by
I can't, but as far as how he was acting, absolutely it was evident.
Did it seem fair?
No, not at all.
Right. So it basically seemed
finishing
like...
the prosecution's sentences, making objections for the prosecution.
Now that's what I want you to get into. Please tell us a little bit more about some of those things. Like you said, the initial one was to where he would actually finish the sentences for the prosecution?
Yeah.
Take over the prosecution?
He would literally take over the case for the prosecution, almost as if he knew the prosecution side of it. And they almost seemed to be on a team together. It was like, the pick and roll or something. It's like you were watching.
Like even possibly they may have done rehearsals before.
They may have. I mean, I cannot say that for sure because I don't know. But as far as the appearance and how things were going down, yes, absolutely, it looked that way.
Did you see any signals going on between the judge, like when he would, when something would be going on in the court, and he would either nod or signal to the prosecution, and then all of a sudden he would get up and object?
As far as that, we did see. I can't necessarily say we because the people that were there did not seem to have the same opinion that I did. Maybe they didn't understand what was happening. I don't understand.
Well, and that's what you understood, that it was.
It was clear what was going on, that it was definitely some sort of military court, military trial.
Right, and that they were saying that I was a civilian.
Yes.
And then that they brought in
after they had stripped your stature away in the
Navy. And actually taken my naval commission and more.
Which
from
they
me.
told which they said in the beginning. That they stripped it away from you, as well as you stated it too.
Right, and that it was a matter of dispute minimally. Yeah. And there are emails from Lieutenant Commander Kummerfeld to where she actually wrote to the Navy saying that I had a quote-unquote discipline problem and basically had them kick me out of the Navy so that the U.S. Coast Guard could then prosecute me without the resource. I mean, did you think that from the resources the Coast Guard had in the computer, with everything online as far as the flash drive and the whole case, that as far as materials and equal access to, I don't want to say justice, but even just materials for the case, whether it be a reading library or anything else, do you think that the way things played out in there, that there was any fairness to this system at all, or fairness to the trial?
No. You
think it was totally one-sided? Did you realize that the judge, as they called him, administrative law judge, you understand he's not a real judge? He's not in Article 3. He's not in part of the judiciary.
Really?
Right. That he's actually an executive branch hearing officer.
Oh, wow.
Right. So he's not. He's just like President Bush or anyone else.
So you're telling me he did not do the proper procedures to become a judge?
It's an Article 2. No, he's actually Article 1 is Congress, right?
Okay.
Article 2 is the executive branch.
Okay.
He's a member of the executive branch, rather than Article 3, which is the judiciary. He's not a member of Article 3, branch of government.
You just said.
So he's like a police officer.
Well, you just said it. I was unaware of that. I thought
Right.
that he had some kind of,
Well,
paper qualifications or something that would state that he was a judge, or that.
No, he's not, and that's part of the problem with these. They're Article 2.
See, because
it's
I
like a
thought that would have
military
been.
court.
I would thought that would have been even worse had he been a qualified judge, because the way he was handling the proceedings.
But it's actually
it would have been
worse
10 times worse. But yeah, it is worse because now
he's pretending to be.
he's being placed there like a pawn.
To
and
pretend
now,
like he's
yes,
a judge.
I was unaware of that.
But you also know, too, that he's a lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard.
He stated that, yes.
And that did come out
As
on the
did
record.
you, and you asked for his recusal.
Because of that.
Because of that, and he
Denied it.
he denied it because
He denied everything and overruled everything that I requested.
I don't understand how this is happening, and it's
and
allowed to happen. I don't.
Doesn't it bother you that here in the United States,
Well,
and with our Constitution and rule of law and what we live by and what we fought for hundreds of years, beyond our Declaration of Independence, that we don't believe in self-appointed or royal family rule, that we go by the rule of law? Did he not seem much more like a dictator
Yes.
in his court?
As far as that proceeding, yes.
And that he had some kind of a predetermined outcome.
Absolutely.
Do you think that, would you want your any family member or friend or neighbor or even your worst enemy to end up in a court like that?
Well, I mean, as a joke, maybe my worst enemy, but
Right.
no, that was definitely unfair, because even my worst enemy, I'd at least want him to defend himself.
Well, and to have the ability, because, and that goes to the important point.
It's called honor.
Well, but it's not even that what is going on, and whether you call it the establishment or the neocons or the powers that be right now.
The elite.
And I mean, we could throw out specific names, but we'll just keep it general for
yes,
now.
I agree.
Is that at some point what they like to do is attack those people who we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Prisoners, illegal aliens, and others, use them as a target, use them to change the law. And when they change the law for those people, what does it do for everyone else?
It applies for everyone else.
Right, and it changes the law for us.
And once it applies to everyone else, then it is no longer the rule of law.
So you realize that even to wish that upon your worst enemy, to some extent you're wishing it upon yourself and your own family and your own friends.
I was saying it
And
as
I
a
know,
joke,
and that's,
yes. Okay,
but to be
yes.
clear,
yeah.
so that we know and understand that,
I was meaning it, yeah, but yes.
that there is a reason that we don't do that even to our worst enemy.
Because it could then be turned on to us, because to somebody else we could be determined as the worst enemy. Even
Right.
though we are an enemy of nobody, we could still become the worst enemy of somebody that just to their determination they want to do whatever it is that they want to do to us.
And that's why we don't justify torture, or we're not supposed to
Never justify torture. Never justify
because we
torture.
don't want our own people tortured. And we try to take the high road and believe that it's not proper, it's not right to do what other people are doing to try to...
ridiculous.
Right.
Torture is ridiculous.
Do you think that these proceedings could be considered torture the way they're being carried on?
As far as a mental game, absolutely.
Yes, psychological warfare.
Yes. It's definitely not the torture that we've heard on television, like waterboarding or any of the other torturing. But as far as a mental game, it is torture. Now, I'm just using that as a comparison.
But it is interesting that you bring up
Yes.
waterboarding, because to some extent, with the number of filings and attacks and home invasions, because even getting a motion in the mail is a form of home invasion, because you're going about your life and all of a sudden you get this document in the mail from these people. And I'm not sure if you were there when I accused the Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander Triboulet of stalking me for the last 7 or 8 years, because this has been going on for that long or longer. And he's actually been promoted from a lieutenant, and I think we've talked about this, and you realize this, he was the citing officer, like a police officer,
Yeah, you
or
went
the
over,
summoning
yeah.
officer. He was also the investigator, and now he's the prosecutor.
And that somehow makes him fit to be the prosecution in this case?
Well, no, but it's a violation of separation of duties.
I'm being sarcastic.
But you understand that it's a violation of separation of duties. We don't have the police officer being the investigator and the
Conflict
prosecutor.
of interest.
Right.
Complete conflict.
And it goes to checks and balances.
Yes.
So that people can't get railroaded. We have one person who would cite them, another person who would investigate, and another person who would prosecute. So that at some point somebody goes, wait, this isn't right. This doesn't pass the smell test.
As long as human nature, the right and wrong sense that we have, I don't know if that's the correct verbiage, but the right and wrong in all of us would know that if somebody's getting railroaded, they would say, hey, stop this. This is wrong.
Well, and there are incidents or cases about that, like the Stanley Milgram He did some studies, I think it was in the 60s, about how the Germans could be quote unquote good Germans, and that you could, rather than just having one person act in all those roles and abuse authority and discretion of each, you could have still 3 different people who would, whether you want to say it, gang up or join forces.
You could still stack the deck.
Right, exactly.
Even though you still have, like you just said, the checks and balances of that process, you could still stack the deck.
But it's better, and it's less likely that the
exactly
will be stacked if you have different people in there who, at least hopefully somebody will say, no, you can't do this. This isn't right. Do you think that the deck was stacked in this trial?
Completely.
Is there, could you give some of the indications other than the judge's demeanor?
Well, really the one thing that you have to understand is the fact that everybody in that courtroom was in the Coast Guard. That's the first fact you only need, is that the fact that all of them, and they were in uniform. That's all you have to see. Well, is that was happening. Once you see that is happening, then the spider web really starts to get deep.
And you saw a Captain French in there, a person who was doing what in the proceedings?
He was on his laptop the entire time. I'm not a student of law. That was objected to, and that was. I found out later that's actually not allowed.
And you understand why? Because like here at the laptop, I'm sitting here. I could have this connected to Wi-Fi or the internet, and I could be getting communication from outside of the studio, and you would not know that I would be getting or what I would be getting. And in a courtroom, you're introducing evidence or proceedings into that courtroom that the court itself may not be aware of, or the parties within the court, and it goes to conflicts of interest. I think you were there when one of the witnesses also got a call on his cell phone, and he answered it, and he had text message or something from
the
Alan
second
Hochstetler?
witness. The second witness.
Hochstetler.
Yes. Yes, he did.
The one with the slick back hair.
Yes.
And he actually got a call while he was on the stand.
Yes.
Right. And don't you think that is inappropriate?
Yes.
Because he could get.
However, it could have just been an accident.
But again, at some point, isn't that a duty of the court and or the prosecution to ensure that those things, the devices, are
silenced or removed? Yes.
Right, and not on the individual, especially when they're under oath and testifying.
Yes.
Did you see what other kind of behavior did you see within the courtroom? You saw witnesses that were there. You saw the security being called. Was there any indication that I, as Lieutenant Shine or Mr. Shine or whatever, Eric Shine, however you want to refer to me or however they want to refer to me, was there any indication that I was going to physically assault or threaten anyone?
No. But they did refer to you as Mr. Shine. But just for the record, it was always Mr. Shine. It was never Lieutenant Shine.
But they did bring up my naval commission, and
they did, but they never referred to you as Lieutenant Shine, which I don't understand why they did.
Well, but doesn't that disturb you more, because then you have a civilian allegedly
being charged for things that he was doing in the Navy?
Well, or being prosecuted by a branch of service, military, that he's not in.
And on top of that, the things that they were saying that you did had nothing to do with, number one, depression, number two, with incompetency.
Did you see any testimony by any of the witnesses that would go towards what the charges were?
No, because I don't understand how somebody saying, okay, if I'm not mistaken, you have these rules on a ship. I believe you called them laws. You have laws on a ship, right?
It is U.S. code.
Yeah, there you go.
Under 46 U.S.C. shipping, which is
right, and you're abiding by these laws that you're supposed to abide by. The captains, the heads of the ship, were not abiding by these laws. You were, and then they used that as the disobeying part. They used that as saying, "Oh, this is why he was disobedient," and this, that, and the other, when he was just following his laws and following the things that he knew as a part of his job. It's just like somebody saying, you work at a grocery store and you have these laws like don't steal out of the register. Pretty simple. Don't steal money out of the register.
Which is also, code. It's also law. It's
right.
not just company policy.
And if you're going to do that and your boss is going to say, "Oh, just steal the money out of the register," they're never going to know. And you say no, and then they use that against you to fire you. That shows incompetency right there on their end, and it's absolutely ludicrous.
Well, did you see any testimony by either? You saw Cecil Ray testify, and you saw Alan Hochstetler testify. You did not see Captain French, the Coast Guard.
I did not.
But you do realize...
I saw him, but I did not see him testify, yes.
But
correct.
you realize that the first two witnesses One, he mentioned about the talking cup, and he talked about Vietnam.
What the heck was that?
And then it was disclosed that he actually didn't serve in Vietnam, that he'd actually prepared some ships for Vietnam.
Yeah.
Did any of these witnesses that you saw seem credible?
No, especially not to the charge.
Well, and even Cecil Ray, did he not? Wasn't it clear that it was a labor dispute,
Clearly.
and that it was an issue of working
Over one incident, too.
Well, and overworking for free.
Yeah, over one incident where you had already been discharged and paid.
Well, and beyond that, did the company not rescind the termination?
Yes.
And so, doesn't it raise the question that at some point, why would this individual come in when he knows that his superiors and legal department have rescinded his letter for termination that was sent out after the fact, after I had already been discharged and paid off?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it make it seem personal?
It would, and it just doesn't make any sense how that can be applicable to your case.
Well, and how the Coast Guard would try to use it now. And doesn't it bother you hearing that the charges were brought March 6th of 2003, and that now in 2008, in May of 2008, they finally get to a hearing?
It does seem like they were just trying to get every single duck in a row to be able to knock you down,
or hope that I didn't make it to a hearing.
Exactly, or hope that you didn't make it to a hearing, or hope that the mental strain would get you to break, or just get you to try to
Give
leave.
up.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all this as a taxpayer?
Well, as a taxpayer, I'm offended. First off, I just think it's ludicrous that we have money that comes out of my paycheck going to a tax on, again, quote unquote, civilians,
Or even a naval officer.
Or even a naval, but I mean, it's still, if they were charging you as a naval officer, you're supposed to be able to defend yourself
and have
through
JAG counsel
through their process, which
Right.
you did not.
And that would be the Navy, not the Coast Guard, that would be doing it.
Exactly, and they seem to be just choosing every angle that they have with the merging of the Coast Guard, Homeland Security, and the military. That's what really brought all this apart or together.
The changes to where now the Coast Guard is in Homeland Security,
Yep.
operating under military law or the Uniform Code of Military Justice,
Yes.
Title 10, which it shouldn't be in Homeland Security because it was written for DOD.
Right.
But now you have this agency that used to be civil service that thinks it's a branch of military.
Right, and the reason that I found out about that merging was because of the oil spill that happened in San Francisco. I can't believe the exact
The Costco Busan. Well, that's it, folks. That's a show. We have a follow-up show to this, show number 2. That was Adam Olabuenaga as a witness who has signed an affidavit regarding the Coast Guard Administrative Law Court system that is now being investigated by the Government Accountability Office, the investigatory arm of Congress. Thank you.
Questions of much graver and universal interest occupy our minds today.